I was a teacher here at the school for a few years. I now own a daycare in the area. I was born and raised here in the United States, born in New York, raised in Pennsylvania, moved to Delaware. So I'm coming to talk to you tonight about the role of women in Islam. A lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about, women being oppressed and held down, and they don't have status in Islam, and it's really exactly the opposite of that. And I'm very honored to be able to speak to you about this, especially as someone who's grown up in this country and always had to fight that ideology that I'm somehow oppressed because of the way I dress or because of what the media tells everyone to believe. Like I said, I own business. I mean, my husband's right there, and he's all for it. So, by all means, it's really important to understand that women in Islam have probably the most high place of any religion, of any culture, of any society that I have personally ever been exposed to or learned about. And it's so funny to see so many people think the exact opposite of who we are. So, if I don't address any of your questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to ask, because that's the best way to find out those answers to those questions. So I'll try my best to cover it here as quickly as possible. So, as you can see, women in Islam, the pictures just show you there's this variety of different ways people dress or languages they speak, but Islam brings us all together. So it doesn't matter what country you're from, what national origins you have. My father's from Syria, my mother's from Poland, my mother was born and raised as a Lutheran and Christian her entire life. But we're given all one unified status in Islam. So it doesn't matter where you come from, what your level in society is, whether it's financial or educational, you're still held to the same standard. You're still given that respect and utmost appreciation and high level of regard. So there's a lot of very famous women in Islam that you probably don't even realize have impacted our lives today. These are some of them. There's many, many more. I mean, this doesn't even do it justice. The youngest doctor in the world right now happens to be a Muslim woman who's 16 years old. Well, I shouldn't say woman, I should say girl, I think. 16 years old from Palestine, of all places. So there is a lot of impact that Muslim women have on society and the world, both now and in the past. So these are just a few of the people. I mean, I'm not going to get into details too much. You're welcome to these slideshows are available, this information is available, but there's a lot of influences in science, in education, in every industry on earth. You will find the impact of a Muslim woman, but somehow it's always hidden, it's always brushed aside. We know the Nobel Peace Prize winners, we know these famous faces that you see on TV, but they limit it to a very specific group that is as if it's just one. It's not just one. So it's just important to note that. Again, we have confident Muslim women athletes. Some of them cover, some of them don't, but there's nothing that stops us from competing. So we have, here at the school, we had our girls sign up for a program called Girls on the Run. And a lot of them were like, oh, how are we going to do that? Why not? What makes you think that you can't? Our own girls felt that way, that they couldn't compete because of the way they dressed. And it shocked me as a mother. I have 4 girls, and it was, no, you can and you will, and you're going to do the best that you can and give it your all, and you're not going to let anything hold you back. And that's the ideology that we grew up with. We're taught that you are strong and you are powerful, and what you wear should be more empowering than if you were to take it off, because you're doing something extra and above that others can't, they can't compete with. So for us to go out and be runners and swimmers and fencers and all of those things, while covered or while having a faith that many of these people, especially during the Olympics, are fasting. The last Olympics, we had many of the athletes were fasting during their competitions. And that tells you a lot about the value of especially of a Muslim woman. So, believe it or not, in our religion, men and women are equal. We are different, but we are equal. They are given, we're equal in the sense of spirituality. God does not look upon a woman as any less of a creature or being than a man. And that's very important for people to realize. A lot of people feel that somehow women are beneath men in some way, shape, or form, when it's actually, like I said before, it's the opposite. We're given a lot more leeway, and there's a lot more credit and praise given to women than to men. So we are different, we have to acknowledge that. I mean, it doesn't matter what your stance is, there are differences between men and women, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's psychological, but there's differences we have to acknowledge for sure. So the concept of modesty in Islam is important to discuss, obviously, because as you can see, the way we dress is very different. And I always compare it to that of nuns. Nuns that wear the habit, the cover, we do it for the same reason. I mean, for similar reasons, I shouldn't say exactly the same, but for similar reasons. We are covering ourselves to be modest. It doesn't help to cover yourself and go out and be flashy and drawing attention to yourself and acting, in the way that you're looking for attention. Our scarves are created, or we wear them to show modesty, to show that our beauty is our own. It's in our own hands. It's not in a man's hand, and it's ours. So we can protect it and cover it and keep it private as much as we want, or we can, show as much as we feel comfortable with. And that also, that modesty doesn't have to limit our brain. Our brain is not covered. Our brain is able to be, we are looked at as human beings. We are looked at not by how beautiful is this one or how attractive is this one. That's not even an issue for us as women in the Muslim world, I think usually. It's not the issue for Muslim women because our performance is what tells, whether it's work, I'm talking workplace or education, that's what your output is, what everything is based on. We all know too often that, especially in the workplace, how a woman has to dress in a certain way and wear certain things in order to get ahead. We don't have that in the Muslim culture. We shouldn't have that. So remember the things I'm saying, sometimes it's not played out in the real world. We have countries that limit women's ability to drive when there's no reason for them to limit a woman's ability to drive, except for a lot of men are in control and want to control that. So that's not part of Islam. Islam does not limit a woman's ability to do things by any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, there's a lot of information. I don't want to stand and read them because these can be playing later on, so you'll be able to go through these slides. But again, we're not limiting a woman based on her appearance. As I mentioned, I went to school, I went to college, I played sports, I own a business, I am, and that's just me, and I am a very small example from the community that we live in. So modesty in Islam is very important because of it's not all about appearance, it's spiritual as well. It's not limiting a person from the inside. As a woman, from the inside, I don't need to think about the appearance is what's going to get me places. It's more of me projecting myself in the best way possible, and that's for all Muslim women. Modesty is also important because of the fact that, we live in a world that is over, I don't want to use the wrong words since there's kids here, but we live in a world that, let's call it appearances, okay, are what's put out there, and that's what sells, and that's what attracts, business and money and this and that, and we don't have to conform to any of that. There's nobody, we're just so blessed not to have to be a part of that. There was one example given that I thought was just a perfect example. When you look at the monarchies, the very famous, like let's say the Queen of England, you never see her dressing in certain ways that you would see a woman who's trying to get ahead in the workplace, right? She doesn't need to do that because she's already the top. So that woman doesn't need to, the Queen of England doesn't shake hands with anybody that walks up to her. She's, too above that. People bow to her. People, don't even dare come near. That's the status of a Muslim woman. So her modesty allows for all of that. That her modesty allows for her to be given that status. So modesty is something that's very, very empowering and not something that's paralyzing and abusive and negative. It's a positive thing. It's a very, very empowering thing for a woman to do. So, there's a lot of writing. I read through all of them. I just don't want to sit here and read out through the screen. So I'll let you guys get that later on when it's playing, when you have a break. But I mean, most importantly, women are given more attention in the Quran. They're in every aspect, in every way, shape, and form. I'm going to go off of the slides just for a little bit, but I want to tell you that in the Quran, there's so much given to women. And as far as rights, the Quran was revealed to us over 1,400 years ago, 1,500 years ago, and there's so many rights that were given to women in a time where, here in the United States, we were given the right to vote, 50, 60 years ago? We were given that right 1,400 years ago. And yet, we're the oppressed ones? It makes you really think. So the Quran is the perfect example. Women who know their religion, this is the biggest point to make. Women who know their religion have a source. When someone wants to tell them something, you can't do this because you're a woman. Well, here's the book that says I can. And it's as simple as that. So the Quran is our playbook. I don't know if I should say it in that way, but it's the rule book. It tells you very clearly. So Mary, the mother of Jesus, is as Sheikh mentioned, she's mentioned in the Quran. There's a whole chapter dedicated to her importance as a mother, and what she endured in the society that she was, bringing a child into the world that no one knew who the father was, and that whole belief system. And she is praised, and people are so surprised when I tell them that we believe in Mary, we believe in Jesus, we praise Mary, we name our children. Where is Mary? Mary was just here a minute ago. We have a little Mary here. So it's very similar, and that praise and respect is not noticed in many other religions. So sometimes she's overlooked, and for us, she's somebody that's held on a very high pedestal and appreciated, for lack of a better term. That's it? No, I'm going to stay. So please, if you have any questions, I try to cover as much as I can about things I know people ask questions about. Don't hesitate to ask questions. And with that, I would like to introduce Brother Shadid, Sheikh Shadid, right? That's not who's next? Yes. He's great. We're going to like him.